An establishing shot reveals a large, elegant mansion under a gray sky. A young man in a formal suit stands before a door as a voice from outside calls for him, accompanied by a knock. Peeking through the creaking door, the young man announces that he is coming in. He internally reveals his name is Arx and that he was reincarnated into an otome game as a background character, but inexplicably, the story's Yandra villainess has fallen for him, a flashback showing her clinging to him desperately. The world is the Celestia Kingdom, the setting of a popular Japanese otome game noted for its multiple endings, and among its cast, the character Eleanor was infamous for her terrible misdeeds. Arx explains that within this game's world he, Arx Leafort, is such a minor character that his name doesn't appear in any of the story routes. He was just a background character, a fact he claims does not bother him at all as he walks through a crowded town square. He muses on the typical reincarnation trope of using past life knowledge to become overpowered, but notes that he has almost no memories of his previous life. The strange exception is that he vividly remembers everything about this particular otome game, recalling images of Japanese culture alongside the game's interface. In this new world, he is an orphan living a simple life in an orphanage, wondering what the purpose of his reincarnation even was. Though he is just a powerless background character, he imagines the possibilities of being a main character, using powerful magic or enjoying school life with friends, and holds on to the hope that a great opportunity might still await him. For now, however, he decides to simply enjoy living in this world as it is. The scene shifts to him training vigorously with a wooden sword, shouting as he parries and strikes. His practice match ends as he lands a solid hit on his opponent. An observer declares the match decided, announcing Arx as the winner while he catches his breath, looking determined. His defeated adult opponent sits on the ground and cheerfully gives up, complimenting the kid on his skill. Onlookers from the village are amazed, spreading the word that he managed to beat all the adults. A small child approaches Arx in awe, asking if they can become strong like him through training, to which Arx agrees, privately thinking that he only got this strong because there were no online games to pass the time. He internally dismisses his own strength, thinking it's only good for fending off local monsters and not nearly enough to become a knight. The director of the orphanage approaches Arx, clapping and offering his congratulations. The director encourages him, saying he's sure Arx will be a fine knight one day, but Arx humbly claims it's impossible for a commoner, prompting the director to pat his head and insist that someone so wise and strong can definitely achieve it. The director then smiles and says that he actually has a favor to ask of him. This favor brings Arx to a massive, sparkling mansion that leaves him staring in stunned silence. Inside the lavish building, his heart thumps nervously in his chest. Feeling completely out of place, Arx asks the director why they are here, and the director explains that someone wants to meet him just as a nearby door begins to creak open. A well-dressed man with long hair introduces himself as Adalbert Ancinous, the count who governs the entire region, apologizing for his tardiness. Arx, stunned to be in the presence of a count, nervously introduces himself as Arx Leafort. The count speaks with the director, confirming that Arx is the capable boy he'd heard about, then turns to Arx and says he has a very important favor to ask, which shocks Arx further. To Arx's utter disbelief, the count asks if he would be willing to become a friend for his daughter. Arx is bewildered, wondering why an orphan would be summoned for such a task and speculating that the daughter must have a troublesome nature, perhaps a terrible personality or a strange illness. The count then calls for Eleanor to enter, and the name Ancinous suddenly clicks in Arx's mind. A young girl with long, dark hair enters the room and politely introduces herself as Eleanor Ancinous. Arx is struck with terror as he recognizes her as Eleanor Ancinous, the game's villainess who used curses and relentless malice to harass the protagonist. The count encourages the two to talk, certain they will become good friends, leaving Arx to panic internally at the thought of befriending the final boss and root of all evil in the story. The two are then left alone together in the vast and beautiful mansion garden. An awkward silence hangs between them until Arx tries to break it by complimenting the wonderful garden, which he admits never gets boring to look at. He recalls the count describing his daughter as cute, but finds her completely expressionless, which seems strange for a child. Despite her cold demeanor, he can't help but be captivated by her beauty, noting that he has never seen a girl with such striking black hair and black eyes before. Eleanor suddenly speaks, asking him if there is something wrong. Her dark bangs frame her stoic face as she waits for an answer. Arx takes a step toward her, asking if she feels unwell and if she would like to return to the mansion. Her expression saddens as she asks him if he doesn't want to be friends with her, just as she suspected. Arx is stunned into silence by her direct and sorrowful question. She continues, assuming he doesn't want to associate with someone as accursed as she is, while he struggles to form a denial. She tells him not to hide his feelings, stating that everyone else has reacted the same way. She recalls memories of people whispering about her, identifying her as the girl from the Ancinous family and warning that misfortune befalls those who get too close. In her memories, people recoil from her, calling her a terrifying cursed child with no light in her eyes, while those who attempted to get close out of obligation quickly fled in fear. After she used her magical power once, no one ever spoke to her again, offering only hateful glances from a distance. She tells a shocked Arx that she is already used to this treatment because she knows it is the correct way for people to react to her. As she touches a nearby rose, it instantly wilts, and Arx flinches at the sight. A powerful aura suddenly erupts from Arx's body. Eleanor explains her magic, demonstrating how everything she touches withers and dies, a power level that Arx has never witnessed before. She clarifies that this power affects not only plants, but people as well. Arx can only stare, his mind reeling from the revelation of her tragic power. With a pained smile, she tells him that now he understands, she is a cursed child. Arx realizes he never knew about the suffering Eleanor had to endure and understands the Count's desperate plea for him to become her friend. He begins to wonder if this was the reason he was reincarnated, to save her now and change her cruel fate. He decides he must put the story back on its proper course. To achieve this, his first step must be to become close with her. He has to avoid the story's bad end at all costs. He steels his resolve, determined to create a future where no one is unhappy and no one has to suffer, especially not Eleanor. Turning back to her, he declares firmly that he doesn't find her creepy or frightening in the slightest. Instead, he shouts that she is unbelievably beautiful, a declaration that jolts her with wide-eyed shock. She stammers her appreciation but warns that her power could hurt someone, but he counters that while that's possible, there must be a better way to use that power, demonstrating by making withered flowers bloom again in his hand. Eleanor is left utterly confused and speechless by this display. Arx continues, telling her that even if she does end up hurting someone by accident, he promises that he will find a way to handle it, and with that he sincerely asks if she will please be his friend. Eleanor's nightmare is filled with voices calling her a devil and warning others to stay away lest her curse spreads. The cruel insults continue as someone calls her a filthy crow. The dream shows her as a small, lonely child, ostracized and looking down in sorrow. She remembers the intense fear she felt, crying out for her mother. In the memory, her mother appears with a cold and distant expression. A younger Eleanor looks up at her mother with hopeful eyes. Her mother, however, looks back with disgust, telling her to stop looking at her with those eyes. The young girl is left reaching for a mother who isn't there. She falls to her knees in the darkness, apologizing over and over. Her despairing thoughts conclude with an apology for the simple fact of her own existence. Eleanor gasps awake in her bed to find Arx looking down at her with concern, telling her she seemed to be having a terrible nightmare. Still disoriented, she questions her surroundings, and Arx reminds her that they were talking in her room. He explains that she had simply fallen asleep from exhaustion right there on her bed. Arx gently suggests that her exhaustion was likely the cause of her bad dream. As he speaks, Eleanor's eyes suddenly fill with tears. She bursts into tears, sobbing loudly and catching Arx completely by surprise as he panics. He instinctively pats her back, trying to comfort her as her sobs turn to sniffles. Arx then gently pulls the crying girl into a warm embrace. She rests against his shoulder, her heart slowly calming down. In the safety of his arms, she remembers his offer of friendship and realizes that she now has someone on her side. The scene flashes back to their conversation, where she insisted that being with her would make him unhappy, only for him to declare that it would make him happy. She had warned him that her curse might hurt him, but he calmly replied that no one lives life without hurting someone. When she tried to push him away, saying he deserved a better friend, Arx grabbed her hand to stop her. He looked at her with unwavering sincerity and told her that she was the only one he wanted. His earnestness had won her over, and she had shyly agreed to be his friend. Back in the present, Eleanor pulls away from the hug and sits up on the bed. She apologizes for crying on him, but Arx smiles brightly, telling her never to apologize and that his chest is always available for her. A small laugh escapes her as she calls him truly kind. He replies that he was only doing what any friend would do for another. Eleanor quietly reflects that she never had an ally, let alone a friend, and wonders if she is worthy of his friendship. Arx tells her that friendship takes many forms and that by making more friends, she will naturally learn how it works. He strikes a confident pose, declaring that communication simply requires practice and repetition. Eleanor stares at him, her eyes wide with a newfound sense of hope. A genuine smile spreads across her face as she agrees to take things slowly, a sentiment he happily returns. Arx wisely adds that life is much longer than they think. A few weeks later, Arx looks completely drained and exhausted. His fatigue is from Eleanor's complete change in personality. She has become incredibly affectionate and constantly seeks his attention to share pastries, gaze at stars, or show off the flowers she bloomed with her magic. He thinks to himself that her transformation from withdrawn to clingy is far too extreme. But despite his exhaustion, he can't help but smile, admitting to himself that she is so cute, he is happy to be with her. He's so absorbed in this thought that he misses her question, prompting a pouting Eleanor to ask if he was lost in thought, to which he nervously apologizes. She eyes him suspiciously and asks if there is something more important to him than her question. Arx smoothly leans in close, his face sparkling, and declares that there is nothing more important to him than her. His charming delivery makes her blush and sputter in surprise. He internally congratulates himself, thinking that he, Arx Lefort, is quite a handsome and suave individual. She quickly changes the subject, impatiently asking about his taste in clothes, but they are interrupted by a knock at the door. The Count enters, surprising them both, and asks if he can have a moment with Arx. He apologizes to Elin for borrowing Arx, which causes her to glare with undisguised anger. She turns away coldly, stating it doesn't matter since Arx had been absent-minded anyway. Before leaving, Arx leans close to Eleanor's ear. He whispers that no matter what she chooses, anything would look beautiful on her. He gives her a small wave as he departs with the Count, leaving a blushing Eleanor behind. In the Count's study, Adalbert informs Arx that the request he'd made has been approved, news that makes Arx light up with excitement. Arx expresses his profound gratitude as the Count confirms that, starting next week, he will officially be a member of the Ancines household. The Count questions if Arx is truly okay with this arrangement, feeling he should at least provide him with a place to stay, but Arx insists the new job and lack of a commute are more than enough. Arx reassures the Count he has no intention of exploiting his authority, a mature statement that Adalbert finds admirable in a 7-year-old. Arx astutely points out that the Count must have recognized this trait in him, which is why he was chosen as Eleanor's friend in the first place. The Count smiles, acknowledging Arx's sharp perception, and Arx promises to do his very best in his new role. He then adds that before he officially starts, there is just one thing he wants to do. Arx returns to Eleanor's room to find her pouting, her anger over his absence palpable. She immediately confronts him, asking why he was so late and if talking with her father was more enjoyable than being with her while she was left to worry. He responds by bowing deeply, now dressed in a pristine attendant's uniform, and formally apologizes for his tardiness. Kneeling on one knee before her, he announces himself as Arx Lefort, reporting for duty. He then declares that from this day forward, he will serve as her personal attendant.